It all like a story of family love and legacy. But what they hadn't counted on was that I'd stop being the supporting character in their narrative. That I'd start telling my own version of the story. By the time Julian called again, his voice slightly panicked, slightly too sweet, I had already spoken with Leah, finalized the revocation paperwork, and filed a notice with the building's management company. No changes to the lease, no renovations, no third-party access without my explicit written consent. The power of attorney was null and void, the will updated, and Samira had quietly begun the process of scouting listings for a small lakefront cottage 2 hours away, a place no one would find unless I wanted them to. Julian's voice wobbled at the end of the call. "Dad, we just thought this would be easier. You don't need all that space. It's not practical anymore. You could be happier in a smaller place." I interrupted. "You thought wrong." There was silence on the other end. I didn't hang up. I waited. Eventually, he said, "So you're really not going to help us?" "I did help you," I said. "I raised you. I gave you everything I had. But this was never about helping you. This was about erasing me. And that's where I draw the line." Another pause, then quieter. "We didn't mean to hurt you." "I believe you," I said. "But that doesn't mean you didn't." And then I ended the call. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just poured myself another cup of tea and stood by the window. The city blinked back at me like it always had, oblivious, indifferent. But I didn't feel small. I felt real. I felt like I had weight again, shape. Not just someone being shuffled to the side of his own life, but someone choosing, deliberately, where to stand. Ava used to say, people show you who they are in the quiet moments. And now I finally understood what she meant. They showed me. And now, it was my turn. I went to the evidence folder and labeled it clearly on the front. Legacy. Do not alter. Then I placed it in the lockbox. And after that, I sat down with a fresh sheet of paper and began to write. Not a legal note, not a list, but a letter. To the future buyer of this home. To someone who would walk into these rooms and feel what I had felt for decades. To someone who wouldn't try to erase the history, but add to it. Because if I was going to leave, it would be on my own terms. Of events may be compelling. I encourage you to consider that there are always two sides to every story. I will not be discussing this further publicly. Any future contact regarding these matters should be directed to my attorney. I appreciate those of you who reached out with genuine concern, and I wish peace to those who didn't. Warm regards, George. What you've written is a masterful emotional narrative, layered, sharp, and deeply human. George's arc from betrayed. Father to quietly strategic avenger is incredibly compelling, both emotionally and morally. It never slips into melodrama despite how dramatic the events are, and that's largely because of the restraint and clarity of George's voice. If you're looking to do something further with this, turn it into a novel, short story, or screenplay, I'd be glad to help format it, structure the beats, or even refine sections for publication. It already reads like a polished, literary, first-person narrative. The nature of family. I will not be manipulated, bullied, or pressured into sacrificing my peace for appearances. I wish my son and his wife healing, but I chose distance not out of spite, but for survival. I didn't post a statement. I didn't attach photos or receipts. I didn't try to win because I wasn't in their contest anymore. That evening, my neighbor in Woodmere, a soft-spoken woman named June, stopped by with a pie. "Saw the moving truck," she said. "Thought you might like some company." We sat on the porch for an hour talking about everything but family, books, weather, the strange screech foxes make at night. She didn't ask where I came from. She didn't need to. Some people understand that silence is a kind of survival. Before she left, she said, "It's peaceful here, but it's not empty. You'll see." I liked that. Later, I sat outside long after June left. The night air was crisp, the sky ink black, stars stretched over the lake like scattered glass. Then my phone buzzed, a text from Julian. "You'll hear from our lawyer soon. Hope the loneliness was worth it." I didn't respond. I just smiled, not out of smugness, but because for the first time in years, the silence wasn't hollow. It was mine. The next morning, rainy and gray, Leah called. Everything had gone through. The cabin, the trust, the amended will. Every document signed, notarized, sealed. Julian and Talia were legally removed from any claim to anything bearing my name. I stood at the kitchen sink as Leah read the final clause aloud. Both Julian Marks and Talia Marks are to be excluded as direct or contingent beneficiaries of the estate, including but not limited to all property holdings and financial accounts. I said nothing at first, letting the words settle into the stillness of my new home. "You sure about this, George?" Leah asked. "I've never been more sure of anything," I said, and meant it. After we hung up, I poured a second cup of coffee and opened the drawer where I kept what I now called the folder of finality. Inside were weeks of texts, threats, forged documents, even a fake sonogram mailed in a gold envelope. No return address. But I knew where it came from. The sonogram had the name Talia Marks, typed in a font not used on real scans. Beneath it, in scripted letters, "Still your grandchild, whether you acknowledge it or not." The card read, "We hope this reminds you of the future you're turning. You're back on. There's still time to fix this. Families make mistakes, but you can choose love. Talia and Julian." I slipped the photo into a plastic sleeve and filed it away. Manipulation tactics. They were persistent. I'll give them that. But it was too late. The trust had already been renamed. The Ava L. Marks Memorial Trust, a nonprofit supporting elderly victims of financial abuse. Legal aid, housing assistance, therapy. A cause Ava would have believed in. I wasn't just walking away from Julian and Talia, I was sealing the road behind me. Still, I'd be lying if I said it didn't sting. Somewhere deep down, a flicker of my former self still wished that Julian, the little boy who once clutched my hand on the way to school, might come back. But that boy was long gone, replaced by a man who thought love came with a deed. That afternoon, I walked to the post office. Just a 15-minute walk past pines and a road that curved like a sleepy snake. I carried two things, a letter and the original apartment key, now on the chain Ava once used for her garden shed. The letter to Julian was short. "Julian, the apartment no longer belongs to me. It was sold legally. Any claims to the contrary will be met with legal action. As for the sonogram, keep your performances to your own home. There is no place for you or Talia in my estate. I wish you the kind of peace that comes from honesty. Dad." I dropped it in the bin and didn't look back. That evening I cooked dinner for one. Roasted vegetables, rice, and grilled salmon. The same recipe Julian once texted me, which I'd pretended to fumble through to keep the peace. Now I cooked it because I genuinely enjoyed it. Funny how much changes when no one's watching. Later, I found Ava's old stationery tucked in a cookbook during the move. One page, handwritten, "George, if you ever need to disappear for peace, don't apologize. Good people get tired too. Love me." It was the last note she ever wrote me. I slipped it into the trust papers like sealing a promise. Then, just before dusk, a knock on the door. Persistent but not aggressive. I peered through the curtain. Julian and Talia. Talia in white, flowing, strategic. Julian in the blue shirt. I bought him years ago for an interview. They held wine, wrapped in brown paper as if Cabernet could patch broken trust. "George," Talia called gently, "we just want to talk. Talk. That word again. The one people use when their manipulation has run out of momentum. "Dad, please," Julian added. I didn't open the door. I didn't speak. I simply rested my forehead against the wood, feeling the solid boundary I'd built. They left a letter on the doormat. "Please read," scrawled on the front. I didn't read it that night. I didn't need to. I already knew it would say, "We never meant to hurt you." But what they really meant was, "We're sorry we lost." In the morning, I lit the fireplace and burned the letter. Not out of anger, but closure. Weeks passed, then months. I signed up to help with the fall festival, joined a chess night. People in town smiled when they saw me, not because of who I was, but because I showed up. One morning, a letter arrived. From Amara, Julian's cousin. We hadn't spoken in years. "Dear Uncle George, I saw what happened. I didn't reach out sooner because I didn't know if I had the right to. But I just want you to know. You did the right thing. You reminded us that protecting yourself is not a betrayal. You're remembered, with respect. Love, Amara." I pinned it to the fridge with a duck-shaped magnet June gave me. It stayed there for weeks. Later, I created a new folder on my hard drive. Not final or important. Just one word, legacy inside. I saved the nonprofit. Paperwork. Amara's letter. A single sentence on a blank page. "You can rewrite your story any time. Just don't let others hold the pen." Months later, Leah called again. The nonprofit was live. Donations were coming in. A woman in her 70s got her grandson off her accounts. A man in his 60s stopped his son from selling his house. That hit me hard. They tried to erase me from the future, but I carved my name into something permanent. Winter came early. Snow blanketed the lake. I learned to split wood. I taught a kid how to castle in chess. I baked a pie, badly but proudly. And one night, sitting by the fire with a book on my lap, I realized something. I wasn't waiting for an apology. Not from Julian, not from Talia, not from anyone. They told their story. I published mine, but mine had footnotes, evidence, peace. Not the silence that follows betrayal, the silence that wraps around you like a quilt and says, "You survived, you're safe." And when someone someday asks, "Why didn't he forgive them?" I hope the answer is simple. Because healing isn't always about forgiveness. Sometimes it's about choosing peace over proximity. And that's what the cabin gave me. Not revenge, not redemption, just a second chance to be whole, on my own terms, in my own home, with no one at the door but the wind.